everyone and welcome to today's video. So today I'm going to be testing out and reviewing the Sheglam Hold the Cone eyeshadow palette. So this is the first time using this palette, so it's going to be first impressions. I'm going to swatch all of the shades, do an eyeshadow look with some of the shades, and then give my final thoughts and reviews about the palettes at the end. So that is what all of the shades look like, and I recently picked this up in quite a big Sheglam makeup haul, so if you're interested in seeing the other items that I picked up, I will link that video in the description. But I hope that you enjoy, and I'm going to go ahead and get these shades swatched. So there is a bit more of a close-up of the shades. So we've got a nice kind of row of neutrals here, some lovely purples and violets, and then some lovely turquoise blues. I'm very interested to see how this shade is going to swatch, because there's a bit of everything going on in that one, but I'm going to do this row by row. So let's get these more neutral shades swatched first. So there are the first four shades in the Sheglam Hold the Cone palette, and they were kind of hard to swatch, to be honest. This top shade here, very vanilla, is like an iridescent kind of white shimmer. That was really difficult to swatch. I'm really hoping that I'm not going to have the same problems when I actually come to use it on my eye, obviously as an eyeshadow. Then we've got these three more, I thought they were more neutral shades, but they've definitely all got a little hint of pink to them, which I actually quite like. So starting off here with this really pale pink, that is Soft Serve. Then there's this one here, it's always got like a little bit of an orangey tone to it, this shade does. This is shade Sorbet Sunset, and then the last matte shade of this row is this slightly more tan nude brown shade, and that is Earl Grey All Day. So this is the middle row of shades, and they've definitely swatched a lot better, definitely much more vibrant and pigmented than that first row. So starting at the top here, this really lovely pale purple shimmer, that is shade Fairy Queen. Then there's this kind of lavender purple matte shade, very pastel-y, very soft looking shade, that is shade Too Cool for School. Then we've got a slightly darker purple metallic, that is shade Sunday Morning. And lastly is the darkest purple matte shade, and that is shade Inside Scoop. And that is the final row of shades swatch. I think this is my favourite row out of all three. So starting at the top is this really gorgeous ice blue shimmer, very aptly named ICU. And then underneath that is a really bright turquoise matte shade, which is Case of the Blues. Underneath that is that shade that looked absolutely wild with the blue and the lilac and the yellow, and I don't know how I was going to get like a good swatch of it, but it does look pretty nice. Definitely a little lilac-y blue shift in it, that is shade Chill Vibes. And then the last shade here actually isn't too dissimilar to that one. They do look pretty similar in the pan as well. This is maybe got a slightly less of a turquoise tinge to it though, and that is shade Sub-Zero Hero. So that is all 12 shades swatched. First impressions were that some of the shades were quite difficult to swatch, especially some of the more paler shimmers, and the actual formula of the shimmer wasn't massively buttery. I've definitely had better formula shimmers, and even other Sheglam palettes I've tried, the shimmer formula has been more buttery and they've definitely swatched a lot better. I will say though with the mattes that there's been no fallout or anything in the pan. You can see I've not had to kind of brush away any chalkiness or any dust from them, so that's a good factor. They're not necessarily the most pigmented, I think, some of those shades that I've ever seen, but yeah, I'll see how I get on creating an eyeshadow look, so stick around for that. So after swatching those shades, I definitely want to incorporate some of the blues and the purples. I think first things first, I'm going to go in with this turquoise blue shade here. Just I felt it swatched better than this shade here. That was shade Case of the Blues. So I'm going to get that laid down first on the inner part of my eye. I'm very interested to see how these shades perform obviously on the eye as opposed to just swatching them. Quite a lot has gone onto the brush quite easily, and again not an awful lot of fallout in the actual palette from this shade, which is good. It is pretty well pigmented actually. I think it's coming across more pigmented on my eye than it did in the swatch, but I suppose the brush can capture a lot more eyeshadow than, you know, just a little swirl of your fingertip. It is definitely applying well. It's, like I said, got really good pigmentation actually, and I haven't actually had to put an awful lot on to get this looking this bright and vivid. I really like the tones of it as well. I think it is very similar to the swatch, which is always great as well. So I think so far my first impressions of using, really, well, at least one shade is pretty good so far. So there I am with both eyes done with the first shadow, and yeah, I think it's going pretty well, to be honest. The shade has applied very nicely and is very bright, and I think the actual tone of the eyeshadow shade is really beautiful, and yeah, definitely a really great start to using this palette from Shein. So the next shade I'm going to go in with is that pastel purple here, Too Cool for School, and I'm hoping this will blend out quite nicely with this blue. I mean, blues and purples are pretty similar tones anyway, so for that I'm going to be popping that on the outer part of my eye. Again, it's going to my brush really nicely and not a lot of fallout or chalkiness in the palette, which is great. It's, yeah, loaded onto the brush really excellently, and let's see how this one goes as well. This is definitely not as pigmented as that turquoise, but it was a more subtle shade when I swatched it. Anyway, I'm hoping these are going to blend quite nicely. I feel like the palettes I've used so far from Sheglam, the blendability has been a bit hit or miss. They've either been really easy to blend or have taken quite a bit of work. Got there in the end, but taken a good old while to get the shades blended. But I think this one actually is pretty good. I do like this purple. It's definitely got more of a lavender tone than necessarily a really pastel tone now it's on the eye, but I am really liking it. And again, for a shade that's quite subtle, it is fairly well pigmented and yeah, not chalky at all, and again applying really nicely. So again, so far definitely so good. So there is the second shade down on both eyes, and I'm definitely getting some kind of like mermaid vibes from these shades. I don't necessarily think that the colour story reflects the name of the palette. It's the Hold the Cone palette, and although some of the shade names obviously are ice cream related, I don't necessarily think that the colour story is, but nonetheless it is a great colour story. So next up, I'm thinking I'm going to go for a little bit of a shimmer moment, and I think I'm going to use this one here, I See You, probably in the inner corner of my eye. I think it will go really nicely with the blue that I've got down already. If I'm feeling like it, I might go for one of the purples, either Sunday Morning or Fairy Queen on the outer part, but I'll see how this first shimmer looks first of all, because I don't want to go too over the top with it. I'm just going to take this flat brush this time. I'm going to try and apply it with a brush first to see how well it applies. I will say that it's gone onto the brush super easily, so hopefully it will translate to the eye and not just all flake away like sometimes shimmers do. Okay, definitely is laying down pretty nicely. Maybe it's just more similar to Case of the Blues than I realised, but I do like the bit of sparkle. Let me go in with my finger and see if that is any better. Oh yes, I think it definitely comes across a bit more icy blue when applying it with your finger. Maybe the brush is just kind of blending it into the other shade rather than letting the shimmer have its little moment, but I think that's really, really lovely. I'm definitely happy with that. Well, I definitely think that blue shimmer has so far been the standout shade in the palette. For me, it's definitely just brightened the whole look up. I really, really like it. I think it's a really gorgeous shade. It was very easy to apply, more so with my finger than the brush. The brush didn't really do anything, despite the fact that a lot of eyeshadow actually went onto the brush. But anyway, I'm going to go ahead now and get the under eye done, I think I'm going to start off in the inner corner, going back in with Case of the blues, and then the outer corner I'm going to go back in with Too Cool for School. But I think I'm also going to blend in a little bit of Inside Scoop, which is that darker purple matte shade, and see how that looks with the rest of the shades. So this is Case of the blues. I haven't got an eye base on my under eye, so hopefully this will apply nicely. It is definitely very pigmented. Yeah, I think these blue shades have really surpassed my expectations. I think you'll be shocked when you find out the cost of this palette as well, but I'll get to that once I give my kind of overall thoughts at the end. I feel like this blue is a really perfect shade for summer, even just as like a little pop of colour if you didn't want to go in for like a really colourful look. And I like as well that there's some neutrals in this palette to kind of balance it out. So I'm going to go in with Too Cool for School now, that purple. So yeah, that one is quite subtle, which is why I thought I would go in with the darker purple afterwards, because yeah, that's not really applying too well without the eye base. So this is now Inside Scoop, which is just a little bit darker. Hopefully that will show up a bit on the outer part of my eye. Yeah, there we go. Oh, definitely very complementary to the purple I've got going on already. Excellent. So that is the eyeshadow all done using the Sheglam Hold the Cone palette. So I'm just going to get the rest of my look finished off, and then I'll be able to give you a bit of a close-up of the eyeshadow. So I'm going to be using a black eyeliner pencil in my waterline. This one here is from Primark. I'm going to be using my Max Impact mascara from Sheglam, and then I'm going to be using my Colourpop Luxe lip oil in shade First Date, and then setting spray I'm going to be using the Sunday Picnic setting spritz, also from Sheglam. So there is the final look all completed now. I have finished off the eyeliner, mascara and my lip oil. So as promised, I will give you a close-up of the eyeshadow so you can see that in a bit more detail. I'm really happy with how the look turned out, and I'm really happy with how the shades actually performed. So definitely let me know what you thought of the look, or if there's any shades in the palette that you would have used for your first time creating a look with the Hold the Cone palette. So you would have now seen swatches of all 12 shades in the Sheglam Hold the Cone palette, as well as me trying out some of the shades and creating this eyeshadow look. So time to just give my kind of final thoughts. So first of all, the palette obviously looks like this. It comes in this matching uni carton as well, and it does actually have the shade names on the back of the palette, which is always handy. I get the ice cream cones with the name of the palette, but I'm not really sure what this kind of hypnotizing swirl is all about. That's my only kind of criticism of the packaging itself. Opening it up, you've got the same ice cream cones, and then obviously the 12 shades. The colour story I do really like, but it doesn't really scream out ice cream to me, or even necessarily beach. The shade names are obviously very ice cream related, but I don't know. I don't think the actual colour story is. I wouldn't get a blue or a purple ice cream, but maybe that's just me. But I did like the colour story. I just don't think it necessarily fits with the name of the palette. So swatching the shades, some of the shades were a little difficult to swatch. The shimmers didn't come across super buttery, which was a little bit disappointing, and although the mattes weren't chalky or anything, I thought that those neutral shades on the top row could have been a little bit more pigmented, but maybe they'll be different when I actually get around to using them to create an eyeshadow look. I was really happy with the shades that I did use. That turquoise blue I think was absolutely gorgeous, as well as that blue shimmer. I think is probably the standout shade in the palette for me. The shadows did apply really nicely and were very easy to blend. I didn't have any problems in that respect. Probably the standout feature of the palette for me is the fact that it's only $10.95. That's in Australian dollars, so not even $11 for this palette. I think is absolutely outstanding and really affordable and really reasonable. The fact that you get 12 shades that are actually a pretty big pan size, I think is fantastic. So yeah, overall I was really happy with the palette and definitely would rate it very highly. If you've tried out this palette, I'd really love to know and let me know what your thoughts are about it, or if you have tried out any of the other Sheglam eyeshadow palettes or products, and I definitely want to know what your experiences of them have been. But thank you so much for watching today's video. I hope that you enjoyed it. If you did, please do give the video a big thumbs up. Leave me a comment, and if you are new to my channel, please consider subscribing, and I'll see you again in my next video.